Hey there, YouTube. Back again on the King Hauler tri-drive. This time since we've got the 3 drive axles buttoned up, I'm going to go ahead and focus on the front end. You can see I've already ripped it down here. Things I want to accomplish in this video. I want to cut down our front bumper mount. Cut it down and move the mounting point back at least 1/4 of an inch. That will make our bumper flush with the grill and hopefully make it look more like a real Peterbilt. Second thing, I'm going to install the new steering servo. This is a Servos, what model is it? It's SC-0251MG. It has 222 ounce per inch power. This is the same one that I have in the RC 4-drive Cruiser, and I love it. It's not waterproof, it's not ridiculous, but it is only $39.99, and it's a dang good servo. They have another model down from this that is only $35. I almost bought it by mistake because it only has 100 ounce per inch torque. And this has more than double for $5 more. Quite a deal. Still $40, but that's a lot of bang for your buck. I think a 220 ounce torque servo that's waterproof is about $60, so it is what it is. Second thing we're going to do on the front end here, I still don't know about the gear reduction unit. I don't know if I'm ready to tackle that yet, but I am going to go ahead and swap the front axle. This axle, I have no idea where it came from. I bought it in a lot of parts. It is CNC machined. It's different than the Tamiya ones are cast. Even the what do you call those? The things with the things. It's all machined aluminum. The Tamiya one, it's just the metal axle, and then these pieces are plastic. Your steering arms. So this is going to be a nice upgrade. I know the front axle is not really going to be doing much on this, but I am putting a good servo in, and going to go with this since I have it. I wouldn't buy one of these just because the front axle really doesn't do much. But I've got one, so I'm going to go ahead and throw it in there, make this truck tough. And since I'm having trouble with the little cheap Futaba plastic everything servo for the shifting on my Scania, I am going to go ahead, since I have a spare one of these RC 4-wheel drive twister, metal gear, yada yada, metal core, and I don't have any clue what torque rating these are. They're pretty good. They're not as good as these as far as smoothness, and but I think it'll be way overkill, more than we need for the shifting servo. And what else? I thought there was one more thing. We'll just see where that takes us. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and finish stripping off the front end here, and then we'll start the axle swap. We'll probably do the servo while we got the axle out, so we can get to the bottom of it easier. Alright, so I got the axles out. I did want to show you part of the reason I'm going to go ahead and do this. It's going to be hard to see here. Get a little more light down here. Grabbing the axle by the ends, there is almost no play if I can hold it steady. Just a tiny little bit from the shaft inside of the steering arm. On the stock Tamiya parts, seems like there's quite a bit more, and that every little micron of movement multiplies by the time it gets to the servo. And the biggest weakest link on the steering mechanism is the factory servo horn. Because Tamiya's have a servo saver. It's plastic. It's like 4 pieces, and it's made to expand and pop out if the servo overextends the reach of whatever it's hooked to. That way it doesn't damage whatever it's hooked to. But everything being metal, you don't really have to worry about that. It's going to pull the tires all the way and hold them, even if the servo's pulling further. So we're going to go with a better servo mount if I can find one. I don't know if I have any, dang it. I'll have to go through my parts and see what I've got for that. And probably won't do that on the shift servo. That one's doesn't need a whole lot of force. It's going to have a whole lot of force. So we'll play that one by ear. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Alright, so I'm done with the front end. I swapped over the shocks and the shock mounts to the back side. Got the front hangers ready to go, and I did go ahead and make both new steering links. And the shafts came off the RC 4-drive old Yoda kit that I've kind of been parting out. And the ends I had left over from, I think the D110 or the Cruiser, or both. And you can see the stock one's just a little thin, flexible rod. This is not going to bend very easily. And I did use some of the different ends on it to move it a little bit further out, away from the shock mounts and stuff up there. It's going to be beefier. We'll see if we have any trouble hooking the servo up to it. Because I did have some issues. I made the bar the exact length, hole to hole, as the Tamiya one, but the axle was different. Just off just a little bit. So I had to kind of re-measure and make that link a little bit longer than the stock Tamiya link. And so I went ahead and made the servo mount, or servo link, the exact same size, and we'll adjust it once we get the servo and stuff in, and we'll go from there. Alright, so skipped a couple steps here. Went ahead and I've got the front axle partially on, and went ahead and mounted up my servos. Got that Servos for the steering, the RC 4-wheel drive twister for the shifting. It's probably completely unnecessary. This little Futaba S303 is really, really plasticky. It's plastic everything. I probably couldn't give those servos away. Yeah, so I'm probably gonna have some issues with the steering again, just like I did on my Scania. Getting that all set up. But we won't be able to try that till I get a new radio, new controller. And it's looking like I'm leaning towards the Spectrum DX6 or D6X. I don't know. Not the I, it's the black model. I've been watching reviews, trying to compare the two, and I think the DX6, plain DX6, is it's more expensive, but I think that's going to fit my needs better. It's got a few more options that'll be handy for using it on this truck, as opposed to using it on a helicopter or a plane. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the front. Where did I put it? Front bumper mount. I've already started cutting. You can see I'm trying to do it with the hacksaw so it's nice and neat, but I'm also trying to restore an old computer at the same time. So we'll start working on this and see where we're at. Okay, so the first cut is made. If I can keep this in focus for you. And that's the part the bumper mounts to. You see I cut almost exactly a 1/4 inch. I didn't measure it. I can't find my caliper. But we're going to call it a 1/4 inch. And original idea was to, keep it in focus, cut that out and then glue this back on. But now that I've got it off, I think I'm going to cut the lip off of this and glue it in to what's left here. I think that'll be a little more sturdy. I'll have more ways, more place, more surface for it to re-glue back to. Not sure what kind of glue I'm going to use yet. Gotta go through and see what I've got. We'll see how it goes. This lip that's left on there will make the bumper fit flush right up against. Let me zoom out so you can see. That fits perfect. It's actually pretty dang straight. So that'll move our bumper back a quarter of an inch, and just getting the mounting holes lined back up and in place is going to be the tricky part. Alright, so got it cut back. The way I'm going to be able to tell is I'm going to put this in here, put some bolts through it, and set this in there and glue them together. Try not to get it on the bumper. I did have to on the front here. Show you that fits right up against it, so I did have to kind of square this out a little more. It was rounded, so I just got the Dremel and went from both angles and tried to square it out enough so that it will set straight. Otherwise, it'll make the bumper sit tilted down a little bit at a downward angle as opposed to perfectly up and down. So now I'm going to try to figure how to glue it. Alright, so I used this household welder that I've had laying around. I used this one time to lock the diff on a Tamiya TLT axle. You put it in there like grease, and you build your planetary gear, fill it with that instead of grease, and put it all together and let it set a few days, and it would dry hard and lock the diff, or it would act like a really heavy oil and limit the movement of the axle, of the, you know, it would be like almost a Positrack type diff lock. It would work. It would hold the tires together a good bit, but it would still let it slip a little. That glue, it kind of dries like a hard gel, so it has a little bit of flex to it. So I didn't let it dry long enough. I tried to work it into the gears better, and it gave me that kind of effect, which it worked pretty well on Rock Crawler back in the day before we had all these custom axles and stuff out. But I got it clamped up there in the vise. We'll let it dry. I gotta wait for it to dry because I need that piece to mount the front shackles. So, be right back. Alright, so we got it in. I did switch back to the Tamiya kit servo link for the front steering. Still has a little bit of play in it. And it looks like it's all in the servo saver, but for now I don't have any nice upgraded aluminum servo mounts, so we'll have to run with that for the time being. The one I had made was a little long, and I just didn't have a way to shorten it right now, so we'll run that for now. Did have one little issue here. The Servos servo is right up against, the cord is right up against the motor, so I did wrap a little electrical tape around it just to shield it. Routed my motor wires on this side, servos on this side. We'll do all that later when we get everything all set. The bumper mount is still drying. It keeps trying to bend back a little bit. That welder stuff is very gummy. So it's held in there pretty well. I mean, I took the bumper bolts out and everything, and it didn't come apart, but it's still very soft. It still moves. So it'll probably take it a couple days to fully cure. I think it said on there at least 24 hours, 24 to 48. So I'm going to go ahead and put the front tires back on. And I'm going to go ahead and do the center caps and stuff so you can see what they look like. And I really want to set the body back and set the bumper back just to see how it sits with the grill now. Just to get an idea of what we did the bumper mount for. I'm really surprised I didn't lose any of those screws. Those caps have been off these wheels for well over a year. So I'm not even sure what we got. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 20 of them. that's what they look like. Those were about 30 bucks from China on eBay. They are, I believe, 25 millimeter wide. The stock ones are 20, and then they have some other ones that are also a little bit wider at 30 millimeter, which would work with these tires. These are 30 millimeter tires, RC four-wheel drive, super wide. Does it say hauler super wide? Kind of an aggressive tread. Look pretty good. I've been pricing rear tires and wheels. It looks like it's going to cost me a fortune. I'm leaning towards the Lisu. I don't know what model or anything. It's some I found on eBay. One of the few I found here in the United States. And they're $40 a pair. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs. So yeah, it's gonna be expensive. But I'm gonna go ahead and I did have a quick tip. The reason I didn't lose any of those screws, these metal magnetic trays, I picked them up, some up at Home Depot, I picked some up at Arbor Freight. They're not expensive and they hold all your stuff really well. Just like I said, those center caps have been off with all the little hardware, and you can see the dust in here. They've been in there for a very long time, and I didn't lose one. I've got several different ones. I've got a square one back there. I've got some up on my shelf over here that have had hardware for one of my boats that I'm never going to finish. So they work pretty well. But I think we're about to wrap this up. I'm going to go ahead and throw the body back on, set the bumper so we can get a look of how that's going to sit. Alright, so here's a bumper. Barely sticks out just a hair past the grill. I don't have the grill mounted, it's just sitting there, so I think that looks a ton better. I think it still could go in a little more, and it might. I've got the glue kind of gooped up on the front while it's drying, then I can trim it back. But vast improvement, I think. It helps with the scale look of it. I did go ahead and put some screws in the body to hold it in place so it was centered and mounted like it's supposed to be. Move you around over here, the super wides on the front do stick out a little bit, which is very much like a real truck. Anytime they have those super wides on the front, they will either sit like this or they'll be even further and they'll have rubber like fender flare on it. I was hoping to do some body work this weekend, but I am missing the sunroof cover, the roof there. Kind of frustrating. I had one that came with the kit, and it's on my little single cab body that I was going to use originally, and it's already glued down and started filling it in, so I can't really pop it back out. But I did want to show you some more updates on the pusher as well, so let me move it around here so you can see. Alright, so I do believe I'm going to run duals on the pusher, same as what the other 3 axles have, but I am going to keep the RC four-wheel drive lowrider tires, and still not set on the final location, but that looks like a pretty good spot up and down. I did rearrange the arms. If I can get better lighting on it. I did have the top arm all the way up here, or here, I don't remember, and it was making the axle come forward too much as it came down. So now I flopped the top arms to the opposite side so they have the right kind of angle, and I moved them to the hole here in the middle of the suspension bracket. So now I get a lot more of a straight up and down motion. I've been looking at pusher axles all week at work, looking at every truck that had them, trying to get an idea how they work, and it's very similar to this. The way the arms one swoops way down and one kind of goes back and angles down. And on the real one, you'd have a small airbag in between these two. And when that one inflates, it pushes the arm up because it spreads them apart. And that's what holds your pusher up in real life. And then you have your giant load bag on the back side of the axle that airs up as the other one deflates, and that's what pushes it down. And when you have a truck without a load on it and you put the pusher down, you'll see it pick up the weight off the other tires. It really pulls the truck up quite a bit. So yeah, I'm liking that. I still need to work on the angle of the axle because I think the bolt in the middle is going to have some kind of connection to how I lift it with a servo. But I don't want to have a servo out in the open. The easiest spot would be drop that bad boy right here and put an arm on it and lift it up and down. But I haven't even got far enough yet to think about a deck plate, or I want to do a rack with chains and stuff, but well, those are so expensive, and I'm gonna have to sell some stuff. So if anybody's looking for some drift cars, let me know. Yeah, that would actually work really well. Put one in there like that, servo arm this way, a link tied to the top of the tag axle, and you just pull it up and down. And I've been looking also. Lisu makes some quarter fenders, or some fenders like this. I think these are a little bit big. Like I said, I do want to put duals on the pusher, but I'm not sure these are the ones that I want to cover it with. So I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. They make some that are nice and smooth. These came off of the Mercedes-Benz 1850 Tamiya kit, and I don't know how I like those on here, because they do stick out a little further than the quarter fenders that come on the King Hauler. I think that's it for now. I did want to talk about the servo functions. I mentioned earlier I'm looking at the DX6 Spectrum, and I'm trying to figure out what the functions are that I want to have. And so far, we've got our standards. We got shift and throttle and steering. So that's 3. 4th is going to be pusher axle. 5th is going to be the 5th wheel. And then our 6th channel, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe a winch, because I'd like to have like a big low boy trailer, one that disconnects the gooseneck part from the trailer, and they use a winch to winch it back and lock it in place. But that's a long ways away, so I don't know. I thought about building a big rack back here with chains and storage and stuff, and cover the pusher axle, just kind of have a workplace. And those type of racks, you see them in heavy oil field applications. It'll have some bars and have a big winch in the middle for winching up trailers onto the 5th wheel. But that leads us to another problem too. The 5th wheel is going to have ramps, which you can build ramps to put on top real easy, but ideally I would cut the frame rails into a dovetail, which is going to be very difficult for me with my tools and supplies that I have. Plus, it will interfere with our mud flaps, the stock King Hauler mud flaps, which are very plasticky. I don't know how well they'll hold up. So I want to gear this down so low so I don't mess anything up going too fast. So lots and lots of options still, lots of things to come. I've been looking at those transfer cases, the disruptor inline transfer case, and also gear reduction. Um, I was considering that RC 4-wheel drive Helios 2-speed transfer case. That thing is massive. It's the size of the one that's in my RC 4-wheel drive Yoda, but it's twice as deep. So it would barely fit between the rails, and it would be nearly 1.5 to 2 inches long. Now I think that's just going to be way too massive. I've considered just a standard RC 4-wheel drive transfer case. I can't remember what they call it now. But it's not quite scale. It's scale for 10th or 8th scale crawlers, but it's not quite scale for this. There are some I've seen at work that sit in there like that, and they are very similar, but they're not quite that wide. They're more kind of in the middle, and they don't really stick down below the rail. And there's some that are huge and they go all the way down. Those are typically for the all-wheel drive applications. So still have a lot of decisions to make, a lot more money to spend, which I don't have at the moment. And then we still got to do paint. And I did want to tell you about that too. I was planning on using this yellow for construction and doing a white stripe with a little design on the side of the hood, like I've seen some real trucks that we've built. So I don't have any problem masking the stripe, but the real truck has black pinstriping around the white stripe, and that's going to be difficult to do for me at that size. I have to experiment with some different masking techniques, stuff that's smaller than I'm used to dealing with. So I don't know how that'll turn out. I'm afraid to try to go too detailed on the paint because I'm not the best painter. As you see from that Scania in the background, it's pretty crappy. I had to redo it. But always, that's all I got for this episode. Thank y'all for watching. Check back for more. We'll have some more videos for both trucks coming up, and hopefully eventually we get to see some driving videos.